I'm usually not really confused about how should I start a conversation or should I start the story with. For the first time, I'm so confused doing this, opening up this webinar and a discussion rather on cybersecurity. Trust me, when I've been looking and how grave the situation is or how challenging the state of affairs with cyberspace is, there is data, everything that can direct you in a direction is there, but yet no one is safe. So what I'm trying to share is that I believe the best of the techies, the so-called phenomenal organizations and institutions can get hacked. I think who are we? Uh, Today's discussion is basically a kickstart of a dialogue with help of all of you for a very important sector, which is the sector of investors. Sectors of investors, these investors who back companies, small, big, in diverse field sectors. The investors just don't invest in the success of the company, but also to do something good or something back to the society or community, as we see at for ethical AI when we look at this space. Now, while we live in a virtual reality, literally surrounded by gadgets and various tools for us to connect to social media or for business as usual, I guess we are leaving something open-ended that is leading to a massive vulnerability getting exposed to organizations of all size. Today's dialogue is basically to put, as I said, prominence on a sector which is backed by investors, sector of private equity, venture capital, sectors of various angel networks, family offices, founders themselves on the other side of the paradigm seem to be in a fix. These vehicles of pool of capital are very critical for two reasons, because through their investments, the valuations are arrived, and through investments of their startups and founders do get a lifeline as well. What needs to be done? What is the key valuations? What is the risk to our valuations that today we are enamored of? We see vulnerabilities on both the side, on the investor side, as well as the companies they're investing in. Today, I am joined by I know multiple words to describe Munish Gupta. We call him the good cop, the guy we feel safe in his company. Munish is President and Chief Strategy Officer for Inspira Enterprise, one of the top leading institutions and organization in the cyber security, promoting cyber health, cyber vigilance, basically trying to say preventive is better than cure. Um, Munish will give us the insight on, of course, what is at risk, somewhere if we can quantify the risk itself, and what is getting done, predominantly what needs to be done. That's what he's gonna put spotlight on. Besides, in this webinar, supporting the team is Rajiv Indimath. He is someone with, of course, not just academic experience and excellence, but as well as the multiple hats he wears, while working closely with founders on one side to help them get hold of their markets and business. He also works as an investor, when doing more than just cutting a check for these. He has an hawk eye, not from now, but from earlier itself, on governance and overall operational efficiency. Rajiv will be moderating this session along with Sarita Bahl, a name that is synonym with ethics, governance, corporate social responsibility, an ex-head of Bayer Foundation, an old hat in the CSR ecosystem of India itself, someone who has led as a torchbearer. Sarita joins as a co-moderator for a panel that I'm going to introduce beside Munish being there in the panel, besides doing the keynote. Joined across the globe or across the borders, our friend, a governance champion, super supporter of risk optimization at enterprise level is Varun Joshi. Varun Joshi joins us from Australia. I don't know, he keeps traveling, so I don't know if he's in Melbourne right now or Sydney, but Varun joins us. And his insights, of course, is going to be very hands-on and very operational, and if I can say, really into nitty-gritties to help us probably take a perspective on what's going behind the scene of operations and monitoring. I'm also joined by a very charismatic speaker, but he's always shy of speaking because in a very young age, Naitik has achieved something which we dream of. Earliest successful serial entrepreneur, sold his company One Health, if I'm right. And the beauty about Naitik is that he brings a very critical perspective to the whole panel today, is what are founders thinking? Besides, what are investors thinking? What is in their mind? Are they as vulnerable as we are thinking of, picking up data points and trying to create a, relevance? I think Naitik's point of view will give us a good insight on what are investors looking at, and you know, sorry for that. Thank you for being part of this journey. Behind the scene is Shaurya, who is the head of research for ethical AI, and the whole lot of EtherWire team that is trying to see that we don't get into any troubleshooting. Besides that, not joining, but my co-founder of For Ethical AI, Anurag Kataria, wishes us all the very best. And he knows that the champions of the topic are here today. Let's see what we can achieve through this conversation. And I'm so happy that you could take out time on a Saturday to speak about cybersecurity. Manish, without taking any further time, bringing you on board on the valuation at risk. What are we talking? Your brief response to quantify that risk for the listeners and the audience would really help for our panel discussion. Thank you. Over to you.
So while Jyoti, you were mentioning about the valuations at risk from that VCs, E sides that we're going to highlight, I would say, the objective of this discussion today is that to support India's growth story, but also highlight the concerns that will be leading for the sustenance part of it. On the one side, we are going to highlight the key things that VCs, PE firms, and the investor has to take care before making any investment decision. But at the same time, I think startups, founders can take cue from it. You know what? They also have to do it right to make sure that they will be able to get the right valuation for their assets as well as the kind of products they are encompassing. So let me start with few numbers. In 2023, India has registered around 100,000 startups. In 2022, we have done some 26 500 startups. So what it shows the rapid growth we are having with the innovation, technology advancements, be it AI or fintech coming into this. So every other day there is a new startup in India, and they are vying for seed funding, Series A, Series B, and Series C. So there is a lot that PE and VC firms have to do. That the flip side, in 2023, India registered around 35,000 startups have to shut down because they were not able to secure the funding, or there were certain issues, be it infrastructure, security, or they were not in position to comply with the regulatory requirements. So that's the reason of highlighting that, because most of the time the people will be talking about that good side of it. We are growing that way, but then there are some, I would say, success, but then failure also. So from VC's perspective, their objective is always quite simple. They wanted to have early on investment into startups or any idea or any firm to make sure that they are investing it and be the part of a growth story of that entity. And then they have a very clear exit strategy that in another 3 year, 5 year, they wanted to exit with 10x, 15x, 5x valuation, right? That is their plain and simple plan. So now, but think of a scenario like you are investing into as a VC or the PE firms into a startup or entity with certain valuation, but in the next 6 months, there is a cyber breach in that startup or the organization. So your whole valuation, even at what price point you have invested into that, will go down because that demonstrate the organization where you have invested into not serious about cybersecurity. The data they might be processing for your end user is at a rest. The valuation, the brand value, and everything of that startup is going down. So it will take so many years to recover that brand loss as well as regaining the trust of the end users. So that is what I would like to highlight today. Whenever the PE and the VCs are making decisions, they are, as of today, the decisions are being made on the financial aspect, the PE ratio, the product, the plan, when they will be, I think, profitable, what is the plan, rapid growth, acquisition strategy, and everything. However, the cyber security has to be the mandatory part of that whole, acquisition or the investment story. And it has to be the part of the boardroom discussion as well. So the first thing when we are or when PEVCs are looking into any potential target for the investment, the first thing that has to be there before going into anything further, what is the management's commitment of the target entity? It has to be top to bottom. How the management sees cybersecurity, what is their plan, whether it is the part of boardroom discussion of that startup or the entity, and how much investments they are doing every year from their budget, how much budget is allocated to that. So these are the things which will give you the early on signs of how serious that organization is about cybersecurity. Another aspect is that based on the kind of industry, if it's a fintech industry, they are processing a lot of, let's say, the confidential data, PI data, or if it's a healthcare chain, right? There is a lot of patient data. Then the second part comes into, because all these industries are highly regulated. If I have to put into context in India, they have to abide by RBI circulars if it's a fintech, and if it's into the stocks or the trading, they have to align with the SEBI circulars, right? And we have seen a case last year also where one of the payment bank was not able to align with the RBI circular and it has to shut down its operation. And its RBI circular is not from the financial perspective only, but RBI circular in India clearly mandates that cyber hygiene, it has to be there. So that is, the one thing we have to gauge, or the VCs has to gauge, is that how they are complying with, or how they're planning to comply with the regulatory requirement, how the sustenance or the life cycle is being taken care. Of course, PVCs, they're coming for the finance background, right? The core business is investment and making benefit out of it. But at the same time, they have to ensure that either they have a CISO or either they have a senior security advisor on their panel who will be the part of all these negotiation and discussion to gauge the cyber security. Second thing is that they have to ensure that there are professional firms available. If you hire a professional, check for the cybersecurity posture of the target entity, right? What is their risk posture? How the target entity is doing the risk quantification? If there is a disruption to their business, what will be the monetary impact it can have? And third aspects, for example, if they're not able to comply with any of the regulatory requirement, the kind of penalty they are exposed to, all these criterias, which will provide you further additional parameters to gauge the kind of evaluation you have to do. So for example, in India, we are talking about DPDP Act, Data Privacy Data Protection Act, right? The new guidelines are coming in, I think, in a month or so. So after that will be there. So there is a provision of a 250 million, right? Oh, sorry, 250 crores up to 250 crores penalty. So imagine a scenario with the current valuation of a 150 crore, right? You are investing into with 100 crore, but they are exposed to 200 crore penalty itself because they are processing personal information, but the all the guardrails are not in a place. So all your investment will go for a haywire, and it will be more like a liability. So in nutshell, I just wanted to highlight why it's important. So, considering the time and the positivity, before giving back to Jyoti, I would just highlight that what VCs or the PE firms have to do. As per the World Economic Forum last year, in one of the articles, they have mentioned that VCs and the PE firms are going to drive the cyber resilience awareness at a global level because they have the money power. And if they are getting serious or making it mandatory to have a broader cyber posture or awareness, startups or another entities won't have option. They have to get serious about it. So definitely it has to be the boardroom agendas for VC than the PEs, cybersecurity and cyber resilience. They have to ensure that the potential target is being properly assessed before making decisions from a cybersecurity perspective. And also after it has been acquired, it is a part of your investment portfolio. The story doesn't end there. They have to ensure that on a regular basis, they keep checking on the cyber posture. They keep asking for the evidence and how the security is being taken. It has to be the part of the journey and not a one-time activity.
Fair.
So that way, P and VCs firms can make most of their valuations or the kind of investments that they're doing. So with that, I think let me give it back to Jyoti and let's hear from our panel members.
Absolutely. Munish, I thank you for covering quite a lot in a short span. But I think answering more questions, you have put more questions out for us. It seems to be. But I believe scratching of head is just the starting point. But before we take the conversation to boardroom, and let's take this conversation to the panel. And Rajiv would, of course, take this forward with Sarita. But before I hand over, what the data across the hacking space, the whole vulnerability of the system, if one has to quantify, and I would definitely like to say this because this is so powerful to even say, if one has to quantify the entire loss of valuations or due to cyber hack, it would be a $10.5 trillion by now. And if this has to be put in a context of a country, this could have been a country in itself, third largest, so to say. But keeping the seriousness of it back on track, cybersecurity is not something that is happening to your neighbor or next door or something. It's happening there entire the system. And who better than Rajiv and Sarita to take this conversation to the panel? Munish, I'm sure we'll see you again on the panel's side. Rajiv, over to you.
Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you. Munish, thanks for that, very insightful, keynote. A lot of nuggets from there. And let me probably touch upon each of those nuggets over the next 30, 35 minutes that we have, right? So let me first begin with welcoming our, panelists. Varun, thanks for joining in from the other part of the world, right? From Australia. Naitik, thanks for joining in. Thanks for your time as well. And of course, Sarita, thank you for being my co-moderator. To lift such a heavy topic, I do need a co-pilot, clearly, right? And thanks, Jyoti, for thinking of me to moderate this very interesting, kind of topic. So, and I think as a co-moderator, I think I have a very unfair advantage, which is moderators can just ask questions and learn and glean from the responses and insights of the panelists, right? So I'm happy to be a moderator, co-moderator, right? Um, so let's open this with probably doing a round robin. We can start with uh, Varun, followed by Naitik, and then we'll close it with Munish. The first round robin. a question that always actually bothers me, right? And we've spoken of a lot of data uh, and data security snafus, right? Um, so if we could, go around and just share what are these root causes of data hacks or cybersecurity snafus, right? Something which I uh, would capture under something called windows of risks, right? What are these windows of risks? Where do these risks start to emanate any early signs, early warnings in a specific organization or a sector? You could pick an organization or you could pick a sector, right? Let's talk about this windows of risks. Where do these data security early signs emanate? And how do you identify with your experience? What are those sniff tests? Varun, we go with you.
Thanks, Rajiv, and thank you so much. It's really feel privileged to be part of this wonderful group. So thank you so much for having me. I think that's it. We couldn't have started it in a better note than what Mani shared, and he set the entire agenda. Coming back to like where are these risks are hidden? These risks are hidden in our everyday day-to-day tasks, right? I mean, sometimes we feel that oh, we must be doing something really terrible out there, and that's the reason we got hacked, or we must be doing something. No, we are just doing our day-to-day jobs. What we forgot to do possibly is that simple latch when we are coming into the house and latching the door. Probably putting on a screen on the window so that no one can see it inside and things like those small things. And when it comes on to data handling and data security, all it comes on to I don't know how is going in India, but right now I'm seeing a lot of news about one very well-funded startup. Uh, they actually have exposed the entire customer data on APIs just because their APIs do not have access control, right? Putting the right access control in place. Simple. If someone needs any kind of access control in order to access your sensitive data, the first principle of information security, like we generally, when we talk about information security at the very high stage, we always start with our three-step process, which I'm sure people will, relate to that. It is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Everything boils down to these three things. Can we keep things confidential? Can we ensure that our data is integrity of our data is there, and most importantly, can we make our data available when it is supposed to be available? So these are the basic three triads where we want to put our focus on. And where do we miss? Whenever we are missing out on basic hygiene across these three domains, that's where we'll be exposing ourselves to any sort of risk or threat coming our way. Naitik?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good, Varun. Naitik,
Yes,
I'll probably improvise and tweak this a little, right?
sure.
We'll still speak about windows of risk, right? But since you've built and sold out a healthcare venture, and healthcare has a very kind of rampant use, misuse, abuse of data, right? On both sides, the patient side and the caregivers, side. How how would you identify early signs of, say, data hacks?
That's a great question. Just but if you can give me more little bit of time to answer previous one also,
All yours.
I'll club both quickly.
Sure, all yours.
And with an example also, because this is a recent example I'm telling you right away in an organization where I'm an advisor. So I'll club all the questions to answers with this example. I got an email from my MD, where I'm an advisor to a company. Okay, it's very interesting analogy,
Mm-hmm.
so you will understand the data risk, data security, and how the hacking happens. And I got a mail when my MD of the company was traveling outside India, and email came from his email name on my business advisory email ID saying, "Hey, I have lost my phone and I am on a important investor business meeting, and I immediately need some funds because I have lost my phone and the wallet, and I am currently at so and so hotel, Why don't you call me on this number immediately that I need your help right now? Because I just don't understand how the hackers knew that he was out of India and he was on a business meeting and he emailed to me on my business account. So if you are not cyber security aware, or if your employees believe that, oh, my MD is emailing me, because your from email ID will look like an exact name, right? They will not look into the nitty-gritties of it, that from which domain it is coming and all of that, right? So if you don't do that on the hush push, what you will do is you will start talking to that person on WhatsApp on some different number altogether, and that's where the initiation of this cyber threat starts. I'm just giving you one small simple example of how hacking happens. I hope VCs also understand this, because then what happens is I immediately start giving them, and if he asks me for 25,000 examples, just random number, I might give him because he may require at that time. So if this kind of level of security, and hence I keep saying one very important thing, that if data is a new oil, then hackers are pirates, you know.
Wow,
And
lovely.
because of that, if they are so smart, you need to beat them in their own game. And for that, you need to keep learning and improvising day by day. Coming to your second question on the healthcare side of it, absolutely. I have been into healthcare in and out multiple times. The norms continuously keeps on increasing, challenging from the data perspective, right? Lot of data laws are coming, as Munish was mentioning about DPDP, and but not just DPDP, there are many compliance in the healthcare side. We don't treat data as important as others. Unfortunately, in India, especially, the Europe's has also creeps up a lot of standards. But from the healthcare perspective, we need to get into a tokenized world where the PII data needs to be separated out than the non-PII data. And whichever areas of operations the enterprise wants to operate in, whether it is on the customer support, whether it is, on the even the smallest of the prescription side, where a critical information is written, that needs to be either encrypted or in a form which needs to be dematerialized, so that whoever is using that information should not get the real outcome of it. It can be masked, it can be done in a different way. There are thousand forms. I'm sure Varun and Munish can deep dive into this. But this is the way every industry needs to treat their own data, and masking in a form where they comply with the authority. At the same time, they ensure that this goes for the future security as well. I hope, Rajiv, I've answered.
Lovely. I like that data is the new oil, right? So hackers are the pirates. Amazing. So maybe we may have a series possibly, right? Pirates of Data Republic, right? A
Absolutely
lot
possible.
of meat around it. Super. Manish, circling back with you, right? Your thoughts on windows of risks.
Yeah, so I think not even leveraging technology or anything, if we have to identify the early signs of risk, I think what we need to have is that just a 30 minutes call with the founders or the management.
Hmm.
It's as simple as that. There is a reason for that, because during my keynote also I mentioned the commitment has to come from top to bottom. It can't be other way
Hmm.
around.
Hmm.
So if the organization doesn't have that commitment and a proper governance framework or the governance structure for a, let's say, data privacy or cyber security, the underlying layer, employees, your teams are not even aware what they have to do. There has to be written governance framework. There has to be written policy. Now, so for example, we are driving on the left side of the road, right? Because that is mandatory. There's a clear guideline. We have to drive, right?
Hmm.
So has to come from our top. Second thing is that what the challenge I'm seeing from most of the organization and is the early signs of that why the organization is not serious or their potential contender of a the data risk or the hacking is they don't even know the what kind of a data they are processing, what is confidential, what is PI data. So there needs to have a proper data identification or the classification based on the kind of a business that you are doing. But the organizations are not doing discovery. They might be having a one database, they have all the controls in place, but then there might be a lot of confidential information which is in your employee inbox or in some other repository. The first thing that starts with knowing your data, what you're acquiring from your end user, what you have to secure, and then only you can have a controls around it. So my take is, I have to talk to any investors or founder, 30 minutes, I will be aware, whether it's in the right
Lovely.
shape or
So
not.
you're touching upon that vein of data culture, which is top down, and it has to again circle back from down top, right? And the loop should continue,
Mhm.
right? To keep tightening it. Lovely, lovely. This brings me to another set of questions, right? And I'm just improvising on our conversation here. Right. Maybe I'll start with Naitik this time, right? And Sarita, I'll loop you in because you have a very specific niche, focused background, right? So, Naitik, I think last maybe 2, 3 months, at least I've got 2 or 3 calls, someone impersonifying, oh, I'm from the customs department and your cargo is stuck, right? And I think this also made news at most of the social media threads, right? I was like, oh, I didn't order anything, right? If Amazon has to send me something, OTP is there, and the guy will land up at my doorstep, right? What is this customs call suddenly? So yeah, I can relate to that, right? I mean, when you brought up the MD example, right? So calls, the telephone numbers being hacked, uh, WhatsApp ID is being hacked, email ID is being hacked, right? So this, I think, is leading to a very large subset of data entities, which are called deep fakes in different forms and sizes and formats, right? So on that, Naitik, let's start with you. Uh, maybe for the average user, probably it's too late, to identify or understand that this is a data fake or a deep fake, right? But from an enterprise angle, right? What are the deep fakes, one could simulate to be cyber secure, right? So that if such a similar fake or deep fake emanates, the system or the AI is smart enough to probably give some early warning signals. So what are these different avatars of deep fakes, right? That you can simulate. Maybe 1 or 2 examples from the enterprise side.
Fantastic question. I think interesting one. I'm sure the deeper examples, multiple examples Varun and Munish can give, but there are 2, 3 which I will give, and I will also let you know with invent of AI right now, it's again double-edged sword. AI will help you to identify because AI can power chew more than what our brain is all about. So then anomalies and everything identifications are really, really helpful to identify, but again, as I said, hackers are the new pirates. So hackers can also use the same mechanism to give you new way of hacking. So we need to keep on learning because this AI game is just a beginning right now. It's like, I'll just give one example. One country ensures that every child of that country gets prepared for a war, right? I don't want to name a country, but then the same way, a organization needs to ensure that every employee, be it part-time, full-time, remote working, needs to ensure about all these deep fakes or multiple different way of cyber crimes in the beginning itself, while the induction or at the very beginning of the employment training. Because if you earlier, the framework is about zero trust network framework, which I'm sure Munish and Varun can explain better, but the framework was more about that, you trust and then you verify. Now, what we are, and I am personally claiming is it should change, because now with the invent of AI and these kind of deepfakes coming into picture, verify first without even trusting. So because of the simple reason that there are remote works happening and you're given the access to them, right? And then tomorrow something happens to them with a company organization and he runs away with a short bit of test. He still has an access and credentials left behind, right? It's a simple way of getting an access, and they are your simple way of getting entry into your larger organizations. I'm not going deeper into the APIs of it because there are other challenges on that as well. So organization has to consider this not just from a perspective of a potential threat. They have to include this as a part of the boardroom discussion from the VCP perspectives as well. They CEOs have to look this from the perspective of core business angle and not just again a mere accident angle. If they don't do it, they don't change the entire ecosystem, don't change from a different stakeholders perspective, these deep fakes or multiple way of entering the organization will continue. This is not going to stop because hackers are also intelligent breed. They are not the ones who do one time activity and run away. They are as smart as the CEOs of your organization. And hence, to identify this, one example is, as I mentioned on the email, the other, as you mentioned, about it from the yesterday my wife got this exact same courier call and she was sitting with next to me and I said, hey, it's a fake call, but she just got trapped sometime because she's ordered so many from Amazon and somewhere he said, did I order? So they're playing with your mind. They are playing with your mind. What are the phishing attacks, what are the scam that they play with your even the photos, right? With AI you can impersonate voice, AI you can impersonate literally the entire video. So imagine you get a video call, an example that you asked. So I'm giving you an example. You get a video call from a random number, but that call maybe it captures some of your photos and the the voice, and you quickly just say, "Hey, I need your help, so and so, so and so," and you cut the phone. What happens? You may see, "Hey, Rajiv is calling me," or there are times that simple example of hotel booking where you go to a Google search, you just search that I'm getting for this hotel. That's a completely fake hotel. There's no hotel in ABC location, right? And you call on that number. He says, hey, my payment gateway is not working. I'm giving you a link where you can just click on the link and just do the things. So organization HRs also don't think that too much, and they keep, sometimes they do it without thinking too much because there is a quick flight needs to be taken or quick hotel booking needs to be done. Hence the all the vendors that you want to identify needs to also come up with some framework. They needs to be compliant with cybersecurity, which highest of the order, else cyber attacks are going to increase year on year, is my understanding.
Wow, that's interesting. So I think what that means, Naitik, even biometrics are not safe, right? Which was
Absolutely.
supposed to be safe probably in 2.0 version of authentication. I think authentication 4.0, as we are moving towards, even biometrics don't appear to be safe, right? They've been misused, right? And I think that's a great thing, right? Anything of utility will have its usage and misuse and abuse, right? And the cycle just has to keep evolving, right?
Absolutely.
Lovely, lovely. Let me segue to Varun. Varun, your examples of deepfakes, in what form, format, and shape?
Thanks, Rajiv. Yeah, so very well explained by Naitik. But so one thing I'll add, deepfake is typically a term that is used for a video message or a video file where someone is speaking, but the structure of the mouth movement and everything is changed in such a way that it can be modulated. A voice is filled in, so it almost appears that the person is actually speaking what the person is speaking, but that's not the case, right? I mean, we have heard so many deepfake videos on there. But I will answer it from the technology perspective, like not using it as it example, because yes, that's a challenge. But that challenge will take some years. That someone is doing a video call with you, and you feels like, okay, Rajiv is talking to me or Varun is talking to me, but I will be able to answer as quickly as normally as I generally do. So you will always be able to identify if a AI is talking to you in a runtime. But there is one place where we still have a big danger, right? You might have, you all have experienced that we use a lot of chat applications in our office or the professional work. Now, whenever we're doing with all these different type of chat, business chat applications, whether it is Slack or any other things, you are now these days getting plugins. Those plugins enables you to extract more out of that chat application. It can actually integrate with your incident management system. It can integrate with reservation management system, and it can give you some of the data right there. I think this is where this intent of deepfake problem will go to, that you are chatting with someone, the AI has reached up to that sophistication level that a message will come in response, and it is highly likely that you will feel that it is coming from a human, but that will not be the case. Although I want to stop here. Why? Because we can talk years and years and years about what is the thing that we need to improve, how we can do this and that, and it will never be enough. And that's why we need to step back and ask the question to ourselves that why exactly we are doing this, what we will achieve when we will bolster our security, fortress, how when we will increase the sophistication of our security controls and everything, what is we are going to achieve. We are not going to achieve absolute security. Absolute security is a myth. It's not possible. The only thing that we are achieving is, if it would have taken 1 day to 2 day to hack our system, now it is going to take 6 months. If it was taking 6 months, now it is going to take 2 years. So it is going to happen. It's no more a question if it is going to happen. The answer is 100% yes, it is going to happen. What are we going to do about it? I think that's where this thing, and if we keep this attitude when we are deciding on this particular solution, then we will think a little bit differently. We will think, okay, we need to tackle this problem right at the source. So instead of spending more and more in the system, can we keep our employees, can we keep our partners, can we keep our investors trained and educated about what's happening? Munish gave an example of, do we know what data we are dealing with? Do we know which data is placed where, right? If the person, the analyst who is sitting and working with the data, if we tell the analyst that, hey, you know what, this data is important for our company. This data is important for you as well, you being the part of our company. When you will give him the right level of knowledge and training and appreciation about the work that is being done, I'm sure those kind of things will. So it all starts with like empowering your people. That, do we know what we are doing? Do we know the seriousness? And that's where it will start, because there is no limit to how much we can spend on the technology, right? And it will be end. So just wrapping up, what I'm saying is that there will be so many versions of deepfake. In few months, probably we will not be able to identify what's real, what's not real, right? But if we follow some simple guidelines, a great example from Naitik, when he was giving me, it inspired me that when we get trained from how to identify the spam emails, one thing that comes always in those trainings is if there is a sense of urgency in that email, think twice. That's a rule of thumb. There should not be any sense of urgency in any email. If there is an urgency, you will receive a phone call. You will have someone come and visiting your office. There can never be a sense of urgency in email. So if it a sense of urgency that is coming in an email, think twice what's happening here. Always give the person a call from your number. As Naitik said, always use a parallel mode of communication to verify what's happening. So things like these will stop us from getting into things. So then hacker can become as smart as they can. As far as their intent is wrong, we will be able to stop them in their tracks.
Sounds good, Varun. I think theory of relativity, right, is essentially what's
Absolutely.
being applied here. And what I also gather there is, like hurry is a waste, right? In this hustle world, you need to pause and, take a little breather to figure what's really happening around you, and who's doing it, from where it's happening, right? To be safe, right? Interesting. So I'll segue Sarita here, my co-moderator, but maybe I'm wanting to pick her on her brains, right? And she's got a very unique, peculiar experience of working on the UN SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, right? Sarita, I'm connecting that with, this is me at my kind of exploratory thinking, right? Which I love doing as a hobby. Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm connecting this to Naitik's earlier point. Data is a new oil, right? Which means it's a new asset, correct? It's an asset of the world. So just as you have sustainable development goals, is there a possibility of having sustainable data security goals? It's also SDG, just like the UN SDG, but this is sustainable data governance or data security or data responsibility goals, right? And would enterprises of all forms and formats and sizes, how will they start warming up to this as they are must-haves and not a nice-to-haves, right? Your parallel, because that's also being responsible, right? In some way, SDG is about being responsible to the planet. This new form of SDG, are you being responsible to customers, consumers, economy, governance, society, and thus the planet, right? Your 2 bits on this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rajiv. I was listening with great intent to all the points coming out, and it's scary, right? That it's not that questioning whether you will be attacked, it's when. It's just a question of when will it happen. And it took me back to 2022. I don't know how many of you remember, Tata Power had an incidence of cyber attack. Now, that's an energy company, right? And they suffered a cyber attack that sort of impacted its IT infrastructure. So they were fortunate there were no immediate environment consequences. But imagine if they were, the whole energy supply of the country possibly could have gone into a spin, and there could have been economic impact. But it just kind of underscored as to how vulnerable everybody is to cyber attack, and especially the environmental goals that are linked, you know. Now, you raise an important question, but for me, I want to look at it from a lens of, can we integrate this kind of an awareness in the existing sustainable development goals, or do we need a separate one? Right? And why I feel that it makes sense to integrate it, because I just sort of quote a couple of SDGs, where I feel that cybersecurity could be integrated. And I would love maybe Naitik or Varun or even Munish to chip in, where they feel. So, you have an SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Now, just imagine the kind of importance cybersecurity could play in strengthening sustainable industrialization or innovation, where you protect the infrastructure, the businesses, and technology for cyber threats. Or you take SDG 17, for me, this is a very important sustainable development goal. It's partnership for the goals. And all kind of partnerships come in. Now, cybersecurity can become the fundamental for fostering international cooperation, and ensure that there is a cross-border digital infrastructure, there is a data exchange, and that collaborations that take place are secure and trustworthy. Suppose we look at what you are saying, let's have a new SDG 18, secure digital, and let me call it as a secure digital development. Let that be the SDG, and it could have the awareness of cyber security, the education, the resilient infrastructure that will need to be, the protection of data, digital rights, and of course there will be, you'll need a global cyber security cooperation, because these are UN goals. These are not set by a particular country. So you will need a consensus at a global levels, which means you will need dedicated resources. You will need focus. You will need to maybe recognize cybersecurity as a very critical component of global development. And I see all of that going to take a lot of time. And I don't think we have time. After I hear what Varun says and what our other panelists are saying, I'm not sure I think we are on a race with time. So both approaches can have merits and demerits, whether you can integrate in the existing SDG or whether you need to have an SDG 18. I think for the current, it would be good. My thought is good to build it up in the integrated in the existing SDG. And in parallel, maybe get a global consensus as to how do we look at, do we need an SDG 18? But would love to hear.
Lovely.
And how investors view of it, I think Naitik or somebody could tell, how are they viewing this?
Oh, lovely. Lovely, said a very good perspective. So I think it could be an interesting case for maybe you to, throw out a white paper on this and, let the larger community respond to it. We can take it to some of the civic tech startups that do kind of policy advocacy, right? It'll be an interesting exercise post this, right? I'm going to kind of change tracks in terms of the lens we are at. I'm going to zoom out, say, at a 20,000 feet, right? So there are a lot of governments out there who are run purely on digital, and some of them issue e-residencies. I've been a part of that as well, right? A beneficiary of that too. Now, when you have a residency or a governance at a government at a country level, which is completely digitized, right? No manual processes, everything's automated, right? How are those countries thinking about data security? What could they be thinking? We may or may not fully know about it, but what could they be thinking about if a data hack happens? Imagine at a governmental level, at a country level, all of this probably global data gets used, misused, abused, right? And here's where I'm going to probably lean on Munish's rich, deep, wide experience, right, on security systems of data, right? Munish, what would these and I'm sure a lot of the governments globally are implementing such digital governance in one form or the other. We've seen a lot of those in India being rolled out, right? While the country I'm mentioning, I'm alluding to is at the extreme end, right? So, but I'm sure there's a whole spectrum of data risks, right? What would they be thinking?
No, so I think they are way ahead of what the enterprise or the corporates have adopted. Let me put it that in fashion. So because you have highlighted about the global outages. So we have just saw one in month of July when there was a patch released by CrowdStrike. All the government offices, airports were shut down because of that. And the impact in monetary terms was a one at least $1 billion of that outage, right? And so definitely that demonstrate that the threats are real and it's going to happen. Now your question is that every country, they have their own data resiliency or land of the law requirements because it's their
Yeah.
commitment
So,
to.
so I'm just segueing there, right? I'm referring to Estonia, which is at a very fascinating case study where the country is completely digital. The governance are all digital. It's just amazing, right?
Yeah.
And they've been doing so for maybe the last 6 7 years, right? They've been issuing these, and they need some governance to top it up, right? Yeah.
So I think in these scenarios, so that's where the broader cyber resilience comes into the picture. All right. At a government level, if you have to think, right, the first broader priority for them is cyber resilience. Because when we talk about the cyber security, it's the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So availability of the services, be it a digital services to consumer is the topmost priority. And that comes via cyber resilience. Cyber resilience is what? Be prepared and ready for known as well as unknown events, disaster, everything. So let's assume scenario. So they have a data center, which is the backbone for providing digital services in one part of the country, right? At the same time, their disaster recovery has to be on the far other side of the country because if there will be flood, riots in one part of the country, other data center can pick and the services will not get disrupted. That is one. Other mechanism is that disaster recovery and business continuity is the first thing, and the cyber resilience. Other things, how it is being done is that for certain things. So I think I should not be mentioning, but I think they keep data backup, not online but on a different sources also. Imagine both the scenarios. Everything is gone, earthquake, everything is there. So the data residency, the backups are being taken in a routine fashion, in incremental. It's on a tape and in a vault also. And another thing is that they have a country to country arrangement, maybe with the Sweden or Switzerland. The some of the things might be lying there under their secure vault. So that level of a planning is being done from that perspective. So I would say that the government level they are much advanced and they are using or adopting the latest technology, even the blockchain. The first adoption you might have seen that in a government infrastructure than the corporate one because they can afford that large computing power that is needed in the backend or the supercomputers or the quantum computing to process that. So this is how it is happening, right? And I think in India also you will see the more and more digital adoption. And I think India has its they are working on a even for banking sector they have their own cloud, which is we call a government cloud. In government in US it's a gov cloud already there. All the Fed offices are on that.
Lovely, lovely. I mean, that actually just tells me next time I'm going to use DigiYatra, right? I have to be doubly careful and sure, right? Should I be using it? Should I be probably doing a trade-off standing in the queue? And I take fairly large amount of flights every year, right? Last year was some 54 some plus slides, right?
Yatra is just scratching the surface. This is just a one step. I think in the next 1 year or 2 year, you are going to see, everything going to get linked. Even on you are on the road or something, facial recognition is the
Facial
next thing.
recognition. Yeah,
In China, it's already happening from last few years, but here it's going to start now, right after DG Yatra. And
lovely,
even
lovely.
there will be ABA card also for healthcare integration.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned of data residency, right? Last, I think 2 years back, there was this whole issue of MasterCard in India not allowed to do business anymore, issue fresh cards, right? Because there were certain issues around data residency. So
Yeah.
does that, I mean, that leads me to another interesting metric which doesn't exist, or maybe it exists, I'm not aware. Like, so in addition to ease of doing business and in addition to having a human development index, should we have a cybersecurity index for countries to rank on their cyber awareness, cyber security readiness? How hack proof are they? And then who certifies these? Right? It's a question to Munish and Varun. Both can alternate with their viewpoints. And then I want to segue to the ending piece of our webinar. Yeah.
No, that's a very interesting point. And I think like you were discussing with Sarita on SDG and point 17, and we should have a point 18 for cybersecurity. I think the similar with very valid point at the country level also there has to be index for cybersecurity maturity and the benchmarking. How one country is doing better than the others or what needs to be done. So as of now, answer to that, who will be monitoring it? I think the first answer coming in my mind is either it has to be via United Nations or World Economic Forum because they have the broader say as of today. And if you see the guidelines, cybersecurity framework, the guidelines going to the governments, most of the time it's coming from their side, and adaptability uh, is better there.
Or maybe ICANN, that maybe governs all the domains, possibly one of the stakeholders.
It is possible, but again, it boils down to the buying. Right. So because you know that from you need the help of United Nations because it's not only why you are saying yes to the cybersecurity, but in the back end you need defense help from them. You need a financial help for them. It boils down to what in return you can offer to them.
Right, right. I just have a thoughts to share, a couple of thoughts to share, but I'll have Varun respond to this index.
Thanks, Rajiv. And yeah, very, very interesting point. I was just thinking, what would be the way and yeah, I mean, United Nations definitely. I think that's the most likely choice. But I still believe I personally am not getting that confidence that the United Nations will be doing it unless some of the countries in the list will rank higher than others. So, but yeah, that's the political side of it. But I'm saying that even if you're not going to that rating part of it, we still can do something about it, and that's something that laying out that chart, that how exactly it should be measured, whether someone is measuring themselves or whether they are comparing themselves with others, or it's a second step of the problem. But what are the things that people should be doing? What are the hygienes we are talking about? For example, earlier we were discussing about the MFA things, like M&A thing, not MFA, sorry, the M&A things, and is cyber evaluation is a mandatory thing in the MFAs, M&As, opportunities, things like these. Whenever government is doing any contract with any of the service providers, are they ensuring that you must have certain level of cyber security in your the services that you're providing, which by the way is happening. So it's still happening. It just needs to be measured. But do you have that at least a basic level of standard? So they do check, and I believe a lot of companies check and everything. So it happens. And going a little back about on your data residency part, the basic premise why the data residency is coming, and why this entire security is needed in the first place, is that every country has its own sovereignty about the data of its citizen, and that's why when you will see new introduction of these privacy laws like DPDPA coming in, GDPR we have in Europe and other places coming in, it requires treaty between two countries that if my data is coming to your country, you will be doing due diligence, you'll be taking proper care of my residents and datas, and not doing something which is going to impact my citizens. So unless we get this confidence, the data should not travel. And in order to enforce this thing, so what government is doing to their suppliers, now the countries are doing to each other. It's the same thing. The data residency is getting its, inspiration from the same principle of cybersecurity, that I want to ensure, will you going to take care of my information and my data the way I'm doing it? That's where it is all starting. And that's why it will be important piece as we going on, as keeps going on. But yeah, that's how the privacy law will put in. We'll yet to see. But yeah, that's where it stands as of today.
Lovely. Interesting nuggets, Varun, Munish, right? I think this leads me like the you could be a node of computer. The you may not necessarily be an individual or a group of organization, right? And that's where the decentralization of data management or governance could probably trigger in, right? Lovely. And then you mentioned about the whole the UN and the political angle. Possibly there could be alliances or maybe kind of bilateral, unilateral, multilateral kind of organizations or agreements out there. Lovely. And this brings me to Naitik, right? Will now Naitik, you've been very active in the startup ecosystem and early stage investing, right? Something similar to my path, right? And as an investor who has skin in the game, right? Uh, how would you probably look at quantifying, these data breaches, data security issues, right? And then possibly look at connecting that with mitigating these risks with a little premium paid for an insurance product, right? And what could those be? Of course, it will change industry to industry, right? Where I'm coming with to you with this question is, what Varun and Munish highlighted earlier. There is a cost of doing business. Like that, there's cost of equity, there's cost of debt, there's a cost of data security or data breach in a specific geography until and unless it's rated, right? So where do you see this quantification and mitigation from an insurance standpoint heading towards?
Interesting question once again, but I'll tell you, from a data science point of view, $4.24 million is an average cost of one data breach in last 2023, as per the report of, if I'm not wrong, IBM or an Accenture, right? And this is
That's humongous.
including, that's one data breach,
One
average
data
cost.
breach.
So imagine the mammoth side, which I think initially Jyoti has also talked about the trillion, right? So it's not just about startup or an enterprise, it's about now the mindset of the entire ecosystem, from the founder perspective also, from the VCP perspective also, and from the employee perspective as well. Now everyone has to come along together and decide steps to ensure that, if, as Varun said, that we cannot be 100%, but can we be gold standards, as we say in healthcare, that you are not 100% giving an accurate answer to your BP, but the same way, I'm not be 100% data secured, but can I be a 99% or 98% secured myself? And that's the framework that we all together from a VCP perspective needs to be done, because they are investing in a startup. One single breach in that startup wipes off, it's a catastrophic event for them, wipes off everything. Don't want to give the name, but right now, I think 2 days back, for even an individual YouTuber, the entire, the YouTube videos got hacked. So the digital asset of that particular YouTuber, that entire valuation which he was maybe claiming at some point of time, is might have been not zero, but definitely amounts to a single two figure digits, right? So from individual influencers perspective, from a startup perspective, and from the enterprise perspective, everybody is valuing their assets in a different form. From an insurance perspective, from a PEVC, I'll give you $1 million idea right now. If VC wants to invest in that, we are undermining the role of cloud infrastructure. Everybody is talking a lot about the applications and the other side of it, and what you're building and what, the consumers and all of that. But we are completely undermining the cloud infrastructure, and we are also undermining, there is something which has happened in 2020, COVID, where the world views can become a shrink to a country view. You will be completely stopped from, getting your own data. There are possibilities, right? So you need to build your own internal infrastructure, country specific, for a very secured enterprise from government as well, or from an fintech or a health tech perspective as well. Hence, every country is coming up with their own data protection bill and data protection controls because of these very reason. One again example is 2 days back, government of India has said enough of this CCTV coming from the outside of India. You can just read that article as well. So they are also saying that because everything is going towards an AI and the CCTV might completely data goes out where from the manufacturer's OEM perspective as well. So one example of it. From a PEVC, from an insurance example, believe me, if any cloud infrastructure company gives that, hey, I am providing an infrastructure with an assurance that if the data breach happens, I will insure you. That business will pick up is my next bet on it. Because
Yeah,
then that is a differentiator now, and it's not something that you are giving it like a currently from an existing player. So if an
correct.
infra guy gives an insurance as a package, is actually a business model and not just one of a thing, is what my
Yes.
understanding is, because that brings trust, that brings confidence to the VCP communities and the startup that, hey, I am using ABC for my tech, and let's ensure that my everything has been insured. So SaaS founders, I can assure you, they are way ahead. They are doing it really well. They are ensuring their data. They are ensuring their entire layer of it. But all other industries needs to come out openly for this cybersecurity perspective and work like an ecosystem and not on an individual basis.
Interesting, Natik. So that, I mean, in some way, we are getting like economies are getting more insular rather than, I mean, this is probably a little downside of integrating too much. And then, of course, you become insular, and then gradually, as cycles play out, they'll again become fully integrated, right? So, in a much more secure manner. So, interesting one. So, we'll start getting close, start closing our webinar in the interest, we've been having some interesting conversations, and, I'd like to have Sarita probably close this in style. Sarita, so over to you, right? And maybe the thoughts I'm going to leave from the rest of the panelists and from me, you know, there is, how do we balance security or excess of security, right? Or multiple checks of security with ease, fluidity, right? Of doing business, or be it the consumer journey, be it business models, be it cost of doing business, right? And how do we take this as uh, a standard operating protocol for each one of us, in different capacities? We are consumers, we are business owners, we are investors. So in some way, we do, play our role in the government, right? So how would you like to close this? Security and ease. How do you balance it?
Oh, Rajiv, I think very interesting conversations and some pertinent points. It took me back to what I once, heard and read, that there was a time when we would lock the house from the front, put a lock on the front door and feel secure. The time has now come to even check whether the backyard door has been locked, right? Because you never know where thieves are going to enter from and what they are going to steal. So I think what the conversation has highlighted, that we cannot afford to be complacent about data, the breach of data, data privacy, and each one of us will have to do a bit. It begins at the individual level, and of course, there are organizations right at the top. In fact, there is a white paper by the World Economic Forum on cybersecurity. And there is an NGO, Cyber Peace Foundation, which has done a white paper on whether SDGs should look at cybersecurity. And that was way back in 2022. But things haven't moved. Right. So which means there is a lot of work to be done. And I love the perspectives Naitik brought from investors and what Varun also brought in. And Varun brings in a global perspective also. And so does Munish, looking at it from a very, I think, 30,000 feet, giving a perspective as to where we are with cybersecurity. For me, the takeaway is that we all need to be vigilant. And it's a sad commentary on where we are today, because vigilance was never a state of mind for human beings earlier. It was more at peace, but vigilance means alertness. So you need to bring that up. You need to, and takes me, Naitik gave a lot of examples of deep fakes. I remember one last week where it happened. A father received a call that his son in France, in Paris, was, arrested because he was involved in a rape case. And, it was like you have to put in some money across first immediately for his release. It never occurred to the father to cross-check with the son. Never. I mean, that's what happens when you are getting attacked. You lose common sense, basically, because you get into panic mode. And I think the alertness that we are talking about is what we are saying that before you rush into a panic mode, take a deep breath, look at what is happening, figure out what needs to be used, common sense. I think it all begins with premise for that. So that's my 2 bit for today's session.
Lovely, lovely, Sarita. I'm hopefully we evolve to a more sustainable, data secure, goal-driven, kind of a society, and I look forward to your white paper on this, right? It'll be exciting to probably weave something into it. But yeah, I think, I keep telling, right? And if I were to distill all our conversations today, right? To police the thieves, you got to think like a thief, right? Or maybe 10 steps ahead, right? And well, this is English metaphor, but statistically, which I like, I think there are a lot of tail risks, right? Fat, thick tail risks, which, because of which a lot of black swan events are lurking around. We probably are not aware about it, right? Once they become mainstream, they probably are no longer black swans, right? And then again, we think in a retrograde, thought process. What next, right? So thank you, Varun, Munish, Sarita. Lovely conversations. I learned a lot, right? And I hope you also enjoyed the conversations. I think with this, let me hand over to Jyoti back for closing remarks. And Jyoti, you've been fantastic, right? Thank you again for inviting all of us. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess this is so brilliant, but the best discussions are the discussions. You may not get all the answers, but you're getting the directions and you have the right advisors to put you on that direction, even if you end up having more questions at the end of the day. I believe one thing is pretty significant is that cyber risk is here, it's live, it's ticking like a time bomb or a ticking like an alarm clock. I don't know, or a clock, so to say. But India definitely needs to strengthen its cyber security, and no comparison meant. Why private markets and venture funds become extremely relevant and important? Because a startup somewhere which has been given a growth capital is building up large assets, and with assets and business is receiving good valuations, on basis of which the investors further raise funds to take further exposure. And it just takes a moment of vulnerability to get hacked. In my ecosystem, I had a VC founder whose email was hacked. I have in my ecosystem a startup VC, a startup in EV whose founder got hacked. I have a merchant banker whose number got hacked, and I get a message, an SOS from US using his DP and a US number. Now, this is happening real time. The purpose of coming together for ethical AI community to kickstart a dialogue, that we are aware that there are no benchmarking or ISO certification happening. You need to decide what your best governance structures are. You need to figure out, assess risk around your business models, your investment model, your operational models, and so on and so forth. With the help, if you can't do it, get the best experts to do it. So when I heard Varun, I had Naitik, Munish, and everybody else, one thing seems pretty clear. One thing is, if data is oil, then hackers are the pirates. Bingo. If ultimately we are just a dollar figure for these hackers, how much value will they put on that dollar is what will decide. That was what Varun brought it up. I think the private equity VC are full of sophisticated, great mind investors, due diligence folks, and run multiple governance across multiple geographies. I think the question is about are startups doing enough at their end as far as the cyber supremacy is concerned? Munish mentioned that cyber hacking is not just a one laptop item that you're doing. These are run as a very professional setups. These are very organized crime category of stuff. And AI being a double-edged sword, Munish and his team, whole Inspira enterprise is doing its best to be two-step ahead. Um, um, so we have a lot to process in terms of what is to be done. One thing seems to be pretty clear: if you have benchmarks, great, but that benchmarks, that frameworks needs to be actively engaged with. The monitoring, detection would take a precedence because it's preventive. Um, there are cases like, for example, the YouTube, our streaming is happening on this very important platform that has given us a lifeline for our content, um, was hacked too, and a massive hack, and so much more. But bringing the spotlight to the investors backing ideas, organization, those startups and organizations having their far-reaching impact, everything can fall like a dominoes if none of them or one of them is not supervising the whole space, is probably my takeaway. And uh, it just carries on. As somebody said, if hackers are working full time, so is Manish's team. If he had one extra hour in a day, he would have deployed that team to 25th hour. Munish, I think more than me, it will be nice if Munish, you give us one few lines as a takeaway for the private markets investors so that we can rejoin this conversation in a later date again. And Varun, of course, your enterprise, recommendations to the investors and founders. Naitik as well from you. So go in that order. Manish, over to you first for your closure comment.
So I think I will keep it very simple. So the thing is that investors, VCs, PE firms, they have to, keep it very simple. They need to find a simple solution for a complex problem. So how? So they need to ensure that, whatever the entities they are invested into or interested, they're starting with the basics. Basic cyber hygiene is the first thing. No deviation to that. Policy, process, and awareness. So because this whole thing revolves around people, process, and technology, and it has to be interlinked. So that's what I would say, try to make sure that stick with basic cyber hygiene, and then it will goes on. But if the basic building blocks are not there as a part of the organization structure or organization investments, then it's a long way to go.
Thanks, Manish. Varun.
Yeah, I'll go next. So some of those grandma's advice that if you're spending something, just write it down. And I think I'll start with the data, the assets. Manish spoke about people, process, technology. Whatever you're doing, make a record of it. What are the different type of services you're working on? What are the different subscriptions you are working on? What are the different API libraries you have incorporated in your code? Are they open source? What are the type? Make that register of it. I think that itself will expose so many questions, so many perspective to you, that you will automatically start working on there. And second goes, advice that can be real handy is, run simulation meetings. Call everyone from your meeting in one room and tell them, hey, you know what, let's assume we have got breached. Now who is going to do who's going to raise their hand? What are we going to do next? Let's start from there. And that will give you the preparedness of the team, how we are going. Because as you know, I've said multiply, and it's a common knowledge. I'm just picking it up. Breach is going to happen. If it's not going to happen today, it will happen 1 year later, 2 year later, or 3 year later. But it is going to happen. Yeah, nothing.
I think everyone has covered many things, but on a concluding remark, I can only say that, this is like a daily learning exercise for this ever complex landscape that we are going to come in the near future. And because of that, the entire ecosystem needs to learn on a basis that how we are going to completely, if not wipe off, but be ready with our tools to prepare that the war of this cyber is going to remain. As Rajiv said, that there might be some movies coming in. It's not just about movies, it will be beyond that. Some web series can come, many things can come on this, because the cyber wars are not going to stop. And not just in the SDG 18. I personally also believe it's actually SDG 1 to 17 to be integrated in each and every section of it. Because your Tata Power example, Sarita, is simple, that now smart meters are coming. Don't you think that can also be a possibility of an hacking? So it's not just about tech only ventures, but real hardcore industrial revolution where pollution become like a problem statement. This cyber will be a problem statement, and for that, this should be inculcated from the early age for the new beginning. And I personally believe it should be part of your education system, ingrained deeply into it, the way we are teaching them about the ethics and the morals and the other things, and the some different education. Cyber education should be must, is what my understanding on this concluding remark.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is so helpful. Whether it's a Bollywood movie or a Hollywood movie with where the good guy is chasing the bad guy, or or a rat or a cat story, what it means is ultimately everyone has to run. It's like that. But I guess self-governance over government is the way forward. Write it down. Besides other things, if there are no benchmarks, create one. No one stops you from having your internal policies in place. And after all, it's I don't know if it's right. It's our right to be cyber safe, but I guess we have picked up something very, very important as a matter of discussion, and the uh, the community is very glad because we have something to take back to our new followers from the private market space. Uh, I I clearly see this is just one of the sessions. There are many going to happen on something more specific that came out during this discussion was risk quantification, various governance matrix, various supervisory applications that can help detection and hence contribute in prevention can also be contemplated. Let's not forget that one of the highlight is sustainable development goal or secure development goal, where cybersecurity takes a center stage. I can't thank you enough on behalf of For Ethical AI and EtherWire, my advisors, think tankers, and co-founder Anurag as well of FIA. Thank you so much for giving your time. Uh, Sorry for all the troubleshooting, but at the end of the day, we are trying our best. Thank you so much, Munish, Rajiv, Varun, Naitik, Sarita, team behind the scene, those who joined us on this session. We were also live on YouTube, so we will be taking this message to larger audience.